getting your vocals right can be so frustrating. But it's one of the biggest differences between professional sounding songs and songs that sound like they were made in a basement. In this video, I'm going to show you how to get professional sounding vocals with no experience at all using stock Logic plugins. My name is Maddie, and if you're like me, you want your projects to sound the best that they can. Getting good quality vocals with Logic can be a challenge, but after this video, you'll know exactly how to record, mix, and get that polished sound that you've always wanted. I'm not here to waste your time, so let's hop into step one. Before we can do anything else, we need to record our vocals, and we need to be smart about how we do that. Getting your vocals right in the recording stage will save so much time later on. If you start with a bad recording, there's not much that plugins can do to fix a lifeless performance or a missed syllable or a mispronunciation of a word. In order to get a professional recording, you'll need a good microphone. A good microphone is one that keeps your voice sounding clear and crisp, and luckily, they're not too expensive. In this example, I'll be using a Shure SM58, which costs around $75. This microphone is my very first recommendation to any producer wanting to record some vocals and willing to spend a little bit of extra cash to get some better sounds than an iPhone. If you're looking to spend a little bit more than $75, an inexpensive condenser mic is right up your alley. For around $200, you can get a microphone that will sound a lot better and have better high end than the dynamic mic that a Shure SM58 is. Microphone selection is really important, but it's a little out of the scope of this video. If you're interested in learning more, hit the subscribe button below to stay tuned for when I release a video detailing exactly what kind of microphones you should look for. I also won't spend too much time on proper recording technique because it really does deserve its own video. But here is a bulleted checklist to follow to make sure you're getting great recordings. Number 1, set your levels right and make sure you're not clipping when you're recording. Number 2, distance yourself about 4 to 8 inches away from the microphone. Number 3, record yourself in an acoustically treated room. If you can't record yourself in a treated room, then you can use something like a clothes closet to help deaden some of the reflections and the sound that you might get. You can also use a makeshift vocal booth. I have a link to an article about how to do that on my website below. Number 4, focus on the emotions of the lyrics and the timings and the flow. Those 3 things can't be easily changed later on, but pitch, for example, can be. Number 5, take multiple takes of each part so that you can take the best ones and comp them together. After following these steps, you should have an audio file that's ready for the next part of this, where we'll dive into the mixing and the plugins that you should put on your vocals to make them sound professional. This is really where the magic happens.
Got her head in the cloud like she don't care. Now she's flying too high on a dumper. She gone away out of space and I don't know where. I don't know where.
Okay, that brings us into step 2, adding plugins. The first part comes before adding any plugins at all, and this is called gain staging. Now that you've got your vocals recorded and sounding good, it's time to go through the take and gain stage some of the parts so that the volume is more consistent. What I want to do is I want to balance the vocal dynamics by going through and looking at the waveforms with my eyes and listening to them with my ears. Balancing the volume of the audio before we add any effects will give us more consistent results when we finally do add the plugins. Some vocals, especially rap vocals, don't even need much gain staging because they're pretty dynamically consistent as is. In this particular vocal case, there's only a couple words I want to emphasize by gain staging them before, and I'm going to do that right here. To gain stage really easily in Logic, you can hold the command button down to use your marquee tool, highlight the part that you want to use, then click on the part you want to gain stage, and go over to the clip gain here and adjust up or down depending on what you need. Another helpful trick is if you click on this button right here, you can make the waveforms a little bit more visible. You can even have an adjusting slider to see how visible you want these waveforms to be. Now that we've done a bit of work gain staging, let's move into the next part, which would be vocal tuning. Logic's vocal tuning plugin can be located in the pitch folder under pitch correction. Anytime I add vocal tuning to my chain, it is always the very first plugin in the chain. I'll first adjust this parameter by adjusting to the key of the song. If you don't know how to find the key of a song without knowing any music theory, stay tuned for a video where I dissect how to do that coming up shortly. Hit subscribe so you don't miss that video. After setting the key, I will adjust the response time to get the effect I want. A fast response time sounds more like classic auto-tune, while a slower response time sounds more natural. Next, let's add EQ. You can add EQ in Logic by clicking on this box, EQ. If you don't have this tab open, you can shortcut it by I. I will show you exactly what I would do for this vocal recorded through the SM58. These settings might not be exactly what I would do for your vocals, but They're a great starting point if you don't know what else to do. To start off, I high pass all of the low-end information on the vocal. Around 170 hertz sounds good on this vocal. Next, I'll subtract the frequencies around the 250 hertz to 500 hertz range, the lower mid-range. And then I'll do the same by dipping some of the frequencies in the mid range from 500 to 1 hertz. With an SM58, I find I have to do some pretty extreme EQ curves, sometimes even up to -8 decibels, but really follow your ears. As you get more experience with this, this will come easier and easier. And lastly, I will give the top end boost a shine or shimmer because the dynamic microphone that an SM58 doesn't have that top end shine that I'm looking for. I've been messing around with the EQ for a while and you can't quite get it to sound good. I've actually got a full Logic Pro preset pack that can help you get professional sounding vocals within clicks. You don't have to keep messing around with different frequencies on the EQ hoping that it's going to sound good. Instead, you can just go through and click on ones that you know will sound good that are already all pre-prepared for you with the same chain that I'm going to be making here, all using Logic stock plugins. If you're interested, there's a free version in the description below. After EQ, it's time to add compression. Compression will give us a more consistent volume throughout the vocal track and performance. Even though we gain stage the track beforehand, we still want it compressed even more. This will bring our vocals to the very front of the mix. In Logic, I really like using the FET compressor or the FET compressor that is an emulation of one of the most famous compressors of all time, the 1176. You can find that by going to the compressor settings, going to Studio FET. For vocals, I often use a medium to fast attack time and a fast release time. On top of that, I will use a 4:1 compression ratio. I'll turn off auto gain, but I'll keep on auto release. I'll turn down the threshold till I'm getting about 5 dBs of reduction. That's sounding good to me. Next, I'll duplicate that same compressor by holding down Alt on my keyboard and clicking and dragging. Now I have 2 compressors with the same settings. What's cool about this is I can go into the second one and you can see I'm getting about 5 dBs once again of gain reduction. The reason for having 2 compressors is oftentimes the 2 compressors help give a more natural sound than just 1 compressor alone. It's as if 2 compressors can do more heavy lifting, 2 hands can lift more than 1 hand, without being overpowering. And on this second one, I'm going to take the mix knob and I'm going to take it down to about 60-ish%. This is going to let some of those transients that came through in the first one bleed through a bit more. This is called parallel compression, and this is a very common technique. Next on the list, we're going to add a De-Esser. A De-Esser is a plugin specifically designed to turn down S's or sibilance in the voice. Sibilance is any high frequency, usually above 7,500 hertz, that has a sizzling sound. This can be T's, K's, S's, mostly S's. So let's go into Logic, we'll go into Dynamics, and we'll go into De-Esser 2 to load that up. De-essing is especially important after we boost the high end with our EQ. We want to take some of those harsh frequencies away. We want the overall shine, but we don't want those S's to stand out. The key to de-essing is to find a vocal part with an S in it, put it on loop, and turn on and off your plugin until you can hear it doing something. After adjusting some of the parameters, I have a much better result. The S is way less harsh, and that's what I'm going for. Take a listen to this. Compared to this. Next up on the list after de-essing is distortion. Distortion will help add some thickness and oomph to our vocals. We really want to make this effect subtle. We're not going to go over the top here. It's all about little things adding up to a bigger end result. So let's go into Logic, Distortion, Overdrive, and load it in. In our Logic Overdrive plugin, we're going to take our low pass and put it all the way up to 20 hertz. We don't want any low pass, any filtering at all. A drive of 6 dBs is a great place to start, but really just play around with this until it sounds good. Because we're driving at 6 dBs, it also makes sense to take away 6 dBs of output so that we can compare them and hear what sounds better. 6 dBs to me actually seemed a little bit too much, so I'm just going to go for 2.25 dBs, see how that sounds. It's really subtle, but this is giving it some more thickness. The next 3 plugins we're going to be adding are all going to be routed through buses, and I'll show you how to do that right now. The first one is Ambience. We're going to click on the Sends track right here, and once again, if you don't have this open, you can click I on your keyboard. You'll go to Bus, and we're going to bus it to one open bus. Let's click Bus 10. We'll name it by double-clicking. We can type in Ambience here, and then we can add our plugins. For this Ambience, I'm going to be using Space Designer, which you can find in Reverb, Space Designer. Ambience is usually a small reflection of the room that you're hearing in real life. So usually it's a short reverb. If you go into the presets in Space Designer, they've got some great options for you to choose from. I'm going to go to small spaces, rooms, and I'm just going to click one that I think sounds good. How about thicken vocals? Sure. I'll turn the wet all the way up to 100% because this is a send track. And make sure the dry is on mute. We don't want any dry signal coming from our routing. So now what we can do is we can take this knob and turn it up or turn it down depending on how ambient we want our vocals to sound. The more that we turn it up, the more signal is being sent into Space Designer and the more reverb we're going to be able to hear. The more it's turned down, the less we'll hear it. Take a listen. Cool. Now, after the ambience, we're going to add two more. We're going to go to bus 11 in this case. We're going to add an actual reverb. That ambience seemed more to me like a chorus effect or a modulated effect, but it is helping to thicken the vocal, almost like an ensemble by adding slightly detuned vocals to the actual original source. Let's add another Space Designer plugin for this part. Click on Space Designer. This one we want to be a medium to large space depending on the atmosphere. Let's go for large. I'd go for a large room. I'm going to go for a clean room. Once again, put the wet up to 100%, and I will mix to taste. Cool. I adjusted the EQ there because I thought it was sounding a little bit too thin. And another thing you can do is after these reverbs, you can put an EQ on it, and adjust them even further by putting EQ and adjusting what frequencies are actually hearing. That's sort of an advanced trick, so don't worry if you don't need to do that. Okay, we've added the reverb. Now we want to add the delay. The delay will help make the sound less in your face and give it a cool effect, echoing to the music. Let's put it on bus 12. In this case, I'm going to use Logic's stereo delay, which can be found under the delay folder. I'm going to go stereo delay here. My output mix will be 100% left and 100% right. That's fine. They have a quick EQ here, which I like to use and get a more of a mid-range tone so we don't have too much high end or low end. And I also like to alternate between eighth notes and quarter notes in my left and my right speakers so that it gives more of a stereo effect. If I both use quarter notes on my left and right, then they're going to sync up together and it's not going to sound as stereo as if they were different. Another cool effect you can do is on this same delay bus and same delay plugin, you can add another reverb. This time, because it's on the same part, we want to keep the dry. We don't want it completely wet, but you can mix this to taste as well. Let's just say a medium space, a hall. How about a medium hall? Sure. Perfect. Now we can take this knob here and adjust to taste. Now that you've followed all of those steps, your vocals should be sounding a lot better and a lot more professional.
Got her head in the cloud like she don't care. Now she's flying too high on a dumper. She's gone away out of space and I don't know where, I don't know where. Got her head in the cloud like she don't care. Now she's flying too high on a dumper. She's gone away.
There are some more things you can do to help your vocals out even more and get a more professional studio quality sound. They are a bit out of the scope of this video, but here are them bulleted. You can always add harmonies. You can record double and triple tracks to thicken up the sound and pan them left and right. You can record ad-libs to help fill in the gaps of the sound. And you can record octave doubles to beef up the sound even more. All of these techniques can help build interest and intrigue in your vocal performance and your vocal mix. And what's cool is you can use the same vocal chain that you have here and just copy and paste it to other parts and other tracks in your song. After you adjust that, you can do a slight different adjustments, such as in the main volume of the track, to help fit it in the mix. Keep in mind though, if you've been playing around with some of these plugins, if it's not getting the way that you want it to sound, then you can always download my free preset pack in the description below. It comes with 10 presets that are all similar to this one that will give you some good results just with a couple of clicks. Feel free to copy this exact chain that I made for this particular vocal recording. It might work on your vocals. There's a good chance it will. And if it doesn't, adjust some of the parameters until it does. Or download the preset that I have for free in the description below and mess around with some of those parameters. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Or if you have any video ideas you'd like to see, please let me know down below. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Peace.